It's working! Yay! Besties and bosses. I do not know if it's Mercury retrograde. It's Mercury retrograde, I think. Or if it's me, or if it's our Facebook live interface. But I have just been on the struggle bus trying to get us to go live. But we are here. Hopefully, this does not cut me off like it has for some of the others. And we can just have our whole conversation. But if it does cut me off, I will hop up into a part two since we had some challenges getting on. But it seems like the things are working now. Anyway, how's everyone doing? It's like spring in New York City right now, so I'm rocking the t-shirt. I'm like very, very happy about the weather right now. Let us see, what are we talking about today? So this is actually a conversation I think that will be hopefully really valuable for you from multiple lenses. We're gonna talk about my most viral reel yet and my biggest takeaways for your business results. I wanna talk about this in quite a few different lenses, but just to give a little, let me share the lenses I'm going to share first. So I think when we talk about virality, I think sometimes with social media content, we almost, it's really easy for us to chase the wrong metrics. So I want to break down my thoughts on what really matters for your business with these metrics. Well, it does matter, what doesn't matter, what actually moves the needle forward. Then content has changed so much in the last, I want to say year and a half, 2 years, probably since end of 2023 is when I really started noticing a big shift. So I thought it would be helpful. I'll actually break down this reel and I think what made it pop and go more viral. I think there were some specifics in terms of the content that you can apply to your content, as well as I think there was a perfect storm of factors that maybe are helpful to know, because I think there's a lot. Sometimes we wonder, why did something go viral? Like why didn't something go viral if it's a good piece of content? So I want to break that down, because I do think there are factors with our hooks and with our positioning and with our content and with the video and all of those factors. And then I think sometimes there's also other factors we forget about really influence what is going to really pop and go viral to that level. I'm going to share a little bit about the good, the bad, the neutral in terms of how this affects your business and just some of my biggest takeaways around this, because hopefully learning from my business will be helpful for you. And I meant to pull up, got all distracted by technology and I didn't pull this up. I should actually pull up the reel so that I can read some of it and reference some of it for you. And I will actually drop it in the captions here. But just so you know, I had a reel, let's see, where are we at now? We're at about, I think, a little over, it doesn't actually show me, a little on for my computer, a little over 400,000. We're at 405, almost 406,000 views. So just for context here, I'm going to drop it in the comments. When I'm speaking to virality, I think we all have different definitions. So just for full transparency here, I know some people consider a 1 million views reel or more viral. This is obviously not at that yet, though it is still growing. I posted this on March 1st, and in the last week, it's grown in about 100K views. And when I'm looking at the insights, the trend has actually gone from kind of steady to up. So it might hit a million views over the next couple of weeks. We'll see. I'll keep you posted on that. But just for full transparency, this obviously isn't a million views. I've definitely had clients that I've supported with their content and reels that have hit a million views. I'm actually talking about that a little bit and why I think for some businesses it's easier to go viral. But in my perspective, and I think the way a lot of business owners think about virality, if this is just helpful for when you're reading content, usually it's when you have a significant amount of significantly more views than you do followers. So I have about, well, at the time of posting this, I think I had around 8,300 or 8,400. I've gone quite a few new followers from this reel. So obviously having over 400,000 views when I have about 8,400 people in my audience, that is significantly more than the people in my audience. So I would consider that viral. And again, we'll see. I think this is just an insight that I've seen from so many pieces of content. How often we think on Instagram content is just like good for a day or two. It's the 18th of March, and this is, if anything, growing. Like it's starting to get the little tail going up and still getting views, still getting comments, still getting saves. I think it got quite a bit just in the significantly more in the last week than it probably did in the first week. And I've seen that for quite a bit of my content. And I share this because what I see happen with my clients sometimes is they'll post something and won't get the traction they think it should. They think it sucks and they'll pull it down. And look, sometimes it's not good, and then who cares? Just post again the next day. I don't think it's going to harm your account. But I think so often what we don't realize is it could still pick up in a week or two. Some of my other reels that have gone quite viral, it's really been over a time thing. And I know for everyone's account's different. I know for some people, it'll happen real quickly. So, algorithms change, everybody's account's different, but I think that's actually a helpful thing to remember. So you're not pulling down good content. Let me just read you I won't read you the whole post, but let me just read you the hook and just describe this so you know what we're talking about, what we're breaking down. I kind of want to workshop. I made a couple of notes for us, to some of my takeaways here. I think what might be most valuable is I'll read this to you and share this with you. I'll share just a couple of the metrics because I think views are great. Views are a great indicator when I'm looking at metrics. If this is just helpful to hear, I find views are helpful because they generally are helping us encompass the rest of our metrics. So generally speaking, when my views are up, that also means my likes are up, my saves are up, my shares are up, my comments are up, right? The other engagement. Views tends to, not always, but it tends to encompass that. But I'm also given the type of content I'm posting and my goal of a piece of content. And I think that is helpful to remember. Kind of a side conversation here. I find it really helpful to have one goal, one topic, one focus, one core takeaway, but also one goal: reach, nurture, sales per reel. I think we're trying to do too much with any piece of content. It kind of falls flat. But I think then also I'm interested in the metrics behind it. So I've absolutely had reels or posts get quite a good amount of views, but not a ton of likes or not a ton of saves or not a ton of shares. And for me, that tells me a lot. That usually tells me there's something that's interesting enough for people to watch it on a loop, but it's not speaking enough to my audience. And so it's not that it's performing badly, but I'm always studying my content. I'm always studying kind of what worked, what didn't work, what are people telling me they want to hear more of. And I'm more interested in what's getting a lot of engagement and what kind of engagement are people giving me, because that tells me a lot more. So if I have a ton of views, that's great. But if I have a ton of views, I had this on a reel last week. I posted something, had a decent amount of views, but I want to say like 9, 10 likes. That's not bad. I'm not like knocking the content, but that tells me, oh, this probably just isn't the thing that's like super interesting or speaking to my audience. Notice, let me not talk about this or talk about this in this way again. So what's interesting with this reel, and then I'll share what it is and break it down, is yes, we have a ton of views here, but what I'm really fascinated in are the interactions. So there's 6,800 likes on the reel. I've definitely had reels with more likes, which is interesting. I've had reels with like 70K, 95K views and more likes. So I think that tells us a lot, and you'll understand why. This is a political post, so that tells you why. Oh, interesting. Not everybody liked this. This was polarizing for people, right? Like there's information even in that. Like I would actually expect with this many views for the likes to be higher, knowing that I think we've had 7,000 or 8,000, 9,000 likes on a reel with fewer views, but that tells us, oh, that's something that's more universally, like people are agreeing with them more. Not everybody's actually liking this content, even though it's getting that reach. Interesting. Comment 1,149. Okay, so that tells us something, right? That's quite a bit of engagement, but it also tells us some information as to why this reel got quite a bit of traction. Saves, I think this is interesting. So 237 saves. I'm always, for reach, I don't think saves are the most interesting metric. I think shares are. Shares probably likes and comments, but saves are interesting to me because as a one-on-one coach, I have different business goals than everybody else. I'm really interested in the relationship I'm building with people, and if my content and my thought leadership and what I'm sharing is really landing for people, helping people if they want to come back to it. So when I have more saves, that tells me actually quite, like for me personally, that's something I like to look at. And then we had 196 new follows from this. And so I think that's also interesting because it is significant. It's more than I've had from other reels. But I think for that size of views, maybe you would expect more. But I think, again, it tells us about part of the reason this reel popped, which we'll get back to. So let me read this to you. And as I'm going through this, please feel free to ask me questions or how I'm thinking about this or how I'm analyzing my content. I want to make sure this is valuable for you and I'm workshopping this with you. And I don't think I do lives like this too often. So again, just feel free to throw the questions at me. So the reel itself is a city. I'm panning the New York City skyline on a walk. It's kind of a snowy path and there's no one around. And I say this and knowing the whole world sees how unhinged he is, even if 1/3 of our country pretends not to. And then I won't read the whole caption, but I'm basically, let me just pull up a beginning of it. I open it with, I've never asked, does anybody else see this more than I have in the last 41 days? So it was the first 41 days of the presidency in the US. So clearly this is a political post. And then I go, into a bit of a story about, if I'm wondering if I'm going crazy, I talk about remembering how much, anytime I feel that way, I go outside for a walk. I remember how much that, I'm relieved to live in a city where I know there's like-minded people, and I also look at the skyline and it just gives me so much hope because I remember the different people who have helped build that, including different marginalized groups that I bring to, and it's just speaking to some of the things I remember about how many people are fighting for rights and for things today. Anyway, and then just basically saying, in case anybody else, just feels like they're not seeing this, we see this. So without reading the whole post, that's kind of the general point here. Now, I think there's lots of things here to say. Now, this is whether you agree with me politically or not. Actually, this feels important to say. This is not for the conversation, but I have some people in my life who don't have the same political viewpoints as me. I probably have some clients who do. And I think it feels right. I'm quite vocal about my politics and about where I stand, particularly in this administration, because I think it's gone further than just political party lines and has a lot more to do with my fundamental values and people's rights that I see are being literally taken away. And I won't make this live stream around this, but I do feel like it's important to say I really believe as a coach, my job is to be able to hold duality and to be able to hold more than one emotion at a time, more than one thought at a time, more than one truth at a time. So I'm very capable of holding my truth and somebody else's truth. I think, and it feels really important because some of the truths I feel are just fundamental values of mine, and that's not something I'm willing to be quiet about or back down around or to, what's the word I want to think, compromise on. And so I think if that's helpful to hear, if you're like, why would you ever post something like this, Kim, like, isn't this bad for business? I personally, in my opinion, because I'm working one-on-one with clients, I want clients who have aligned values. They do not need to think like me. They don't need to have the same business as me. They don't even need to think politically like me. But I do believe that fundamentally, if our values are, the values I don't want to compromise on are misaligned, or if someone doesn't want to work with somebody who is able to hold two truths so one, but is going to feel very vocal about speaking their truth, just fundamentally it's going to be a mismatch. And it's just also a big value of mine to use my voice and to use my platform in that way. So just to kind of give a side note there, because I think a lot of people have had questions about that, but I think that's also one of the reasons this reel popped. So I'm going to share to some of the reasons, like we'll break down the actual hook itself, but just to keep it really, really real here, one of the reasons this reel went viral, if your goal is just to go viral, having a really clear point of view that is around a universally popular, not that it's popular, but a topic that's in the zeitgeist or going on currently, especially if it's relevant, relatable, and controversial, it's just going to pop more. And I think that's just really helpful to just call it how it is. Part of the reason, and I'll share the reasons for this, but part of the reason this reel got so much reach is it is controversial. It is taking a very clear line in the sand that it's very relevant. It was also very timely. So timely content, right? If you want to get some reach, once a week, find something that's timely in going on in the world, and you can relate content to it. That's just going to help you get more visibility. After the Super Bowl, I posted something about Kendrick Lamar. I still related it back to my business. I still made it really relevant to my audience, but that performed really well because it was relevant, it was timely, it was universal, and I think that was also a little bit controversial. And I'm sharing this because I do not think anybody should share content to be controversial for controversial sake. I did not post this to be controversial. I did not post it. I honestly, before posting this, thought either people wouldn't see this or they wouldn't agree with it, or I just get hate comments. It was not like I posted this thinking this is going to what happened at all. I think that's personally manipulative and gross. However, outside of politics, if we're looking at things that are timely in our world, you can speak to things that you are a thought leader around and have opinions around, and share your vulnerability and share your truth, and still let that be a strategic play for you and tie it back to your work and allow that to be a way to get visibility. And so I just want to name, that's one of the reasons this did really well, particularly for those of you who are business to business or who sell something that is, it's really niche, but it's not super universal. It's not a universal topic. I'm a business coach. There's only so many coaches and therapists who are looking for a business coach and interested in that content, versus if I was, say, maybe a general therapist, for example. I have quite a few clients who are therapists. In general, I think their content, there's an opportunity because there are such universal human topics they're speaking about. I find a lot of their content does really well, gets more reach, I should say, for that reason. I think in general, business to consumer versus business to business in general, I think just because there's more business, there's more general population than generally within a small like business to business niche. We're just generally going to have more reach there. So the reason I'm sharing all of that is here, the reason this outperforms so much of my content is this is not a business to business topic that I share. This is a business to consumer. And really it's a consumer to consumer universal topic. Hopefully that makes sense what I'm saying there. And so what I tell my clients all the time is if your goal is reach with a reel, I'm always saying the terms universal but specific, meaning what is a universal topic that you can then share in a really specific way that tends to get the most reach. And so this was a very universal topic. If I talk about my trauma, or if I talk about perfectionism, or if I talk about I posted something like if I talk about working out, right? And I relate it back to business, but those are very universal topics. They're just generally going to get more reach. I still need to be specific in them though. The more general, the more universal, I should say, not general, the more universal a topic, the more specific we want to make sure we are in the way we've described it. And so I think one of the reasons this did really well is it was a very universal topic. I shared a hook in a way that was very, very specific, right? I didn't just like share like a very general thought around like I'm pissed at what's going on. My caption, if you go into it, it's I mean, I poured my heart out. I was quite vulnerable. I shared my story. I think all the things that we know, like shared specific details in there. And then on top of that, what I was sharing unintentionally, I mean, I thought I was just going to be speaking to my people and sharing my voice, but it ended up being very controversial in terms, and so that when it's, again, we don't want to be controversial for controversial's sake, but when something is both timely and controversial, what happens is that's something people want to engage with. Engagement is what drives reach. And so or when you're opinionated enough, or when it's something that's super relatable. And so I think this one kind of hit all of those boxes. It was timely. And I wrote this after the 41st day of Trump being in office, but what happened is we kept having timely things happen that this reel was relatable to, and I think that's why it's continued to get reach instead of just kind of dying off. We had his horrific behavior with Zelensky. I won't even list all of the things because we'll just start crying on a live stream here, but we've just had issue after issue, and the way the hook is positioned, it could apply to any of those. And so while I was referencing something, I think I posted this right after his conversation with Zelensky, while I was referencing something really specific when I posted this, it again was universal and it was timely, but it kept being timely. And so I think that kept, and it kept being timely and controversial because there's a lot of people who feel differently about this. And so then because of that, and it also was relatable, but because of that timeliness, right, the timeliness kept compounding. So, and I'm sharing that because those are factors you kind of can't manipulate. I think sometimes we look at people's content, we're like, why did that blow up? Why did that go viral? And I want you to see there are certain factors that and I'll break down the content pieces in terms of like what made the hook work and things like that. We still need to have those elements, but I think sometimes we can get so obsessed over virality and forget or like miss, like there's so many different factors that go into that. But when something is controversial or super relatable, what happens? People share it, people save it. Yes, people like it, but all of those comments, the reason I have so many comments on that is the majority of them are hate comments towards me. The majority of them are people calling me names, telling me how stupid I am, telling me how bad at business I am, telling me how manipulative I am, calling me a narcissist, telling me I need therapy, calling me a clown, right? There's telling me I'm wrong. And so part of what made this go viral is the controversial nature, but it's just interesting, and I think we want to be really honest about that because so many people say they want virality, and I think we forget virality. I think in business, I talk about this with clients all the time. So many of my clients want a really big business and they want to have more success, make more money, have a really big program. And some of the conversations we talk about is that's great, and we can like figure out the strategy for that. This is aside from my reel, but you're really, generally speaking, only going to be able to grow and expand to the level of discomfort and disagreement and people not liking you that you're willing to tolerate and handle, because generally speaking, the bigger your business, the bigger your visibility, the more people you're holding, right? The more people that are going to disagree with you, the more people you're going to disappoint. The more people, I think that disappointment piece is a big part. The more people who, are not going to be, for as many people as you have fans, right? We talk about this all the time with messaging. To have a strong message, to have strong thought leadership, that means you have to stand for something. When you're standing for something, you are going to attract the people who are for that, and you're going to repel all of the people who aren't for that. That's just kind of the nature of good messaging, good marketing strategy, right? And we could call that controversial. I think that's very different than being controversial for the sake of being controversial. That is simply having a strong enough opinion, having a voice, having a stand, having a brand, right? But the more you do that, the more you're going to create the people who are for that and not for that. And the more then, because of that, you'll see that creates engagement. And I think we think of engagement as like, we just want all people cheering us on. But in this case, I mean, in many ways, the haters, I've talked about this quite a bit, so I won't overspeak that part, but the haters in many ways are the very reason part of this reel blew up. And then because of that, they put it in front of more people that it was also for. So I think in that way, it was kind of a perfect storm for virality. There was something, and then the other piece here, and I think this is just really interesting. It was almost like an accident, but I wrote in the reel that, what was my caption? It was essentially, I pulled it down now, but this and knowing most of the world sees how unhinged he is, even if 1/3 of our country doesn't, or 1/3 of our people don't. I was referring to the 1/3 of eligible voters who didn't vote. And I realized in hindsight, I probably could have used a different number there to refer to maybe the people who are the 47% of the population who is like in the polls saying that. But because of that, people who were haters or who don't agree with me, people are welcome to disagree with me. I think calling names is a whole different thing, but people are welcome to disagree with me or have different opinions. And if they want to have critical thinking skills in an open conversation, I'm available for that. And that just feels so important to keep saying. But I think because of that, the people who were haters just assumed I was minimizing the number of supporters for Trump. And so that also fed a lot of the commentary and a lot of people in the comments correcting me, calling me out, because that number was different, because that wasn't specific enough there. And so I think that's just even interesting to see how, that was just sort of a happy accident. I actually wonder if I had been more, clear on what I meant there, if this would have died like a week ago. And so I think that's just, again, a happy accident. And I say that because sometimes we forget with viral reels, like we're like looking for the secret sauce and magic, and like yes, there's formulas to going viral and to getting reach and to having your content pop, but I think there's all these other elements that come into it. One of the other sort of like happy accident elements, I guess you could hack this, but the audio I used was a very specific audio that a quite well-known immigration lawyer who I really like her content and her work, though I cannot think of her name. She's a blonde lady who always wears a lot of pink. She's doing a lot of immigration work and she's sharing a lot of content around this. She had used this audio, and it might be hers or someone else's, and it was a really fitting, very accurate audio. It had barely been used. I think maybe maybe like 60 uses. I don't know what that is, but whatever it was. And so as this grew, my reel got moved up when you look up the trending audio. I think I haven't checked recently, but I looked a little while ago. I was the second from the pinned audio image. So I'm sure that boosted some of my views. And her content is quite controversial, and she gets a lot of haters as well as a lot of people who agree with it. So I'm sure some of her people went to go look at the audio, and also just because of my placement there, that got me visibility. And so I'm sharing all of these are a lot of like nuances, not content pieces. Hey Claire, nice to see you here. But I think it's just, again, helpful sometimes to hear. It's so funny, it's not showing the ear. But I think sometimes it's just helpful to hear that when we're trying to like figure out like, why did that work for someone else? Like, what am I doing wrong? I think we forget that there are so many factors that go into what makes a piece of content pop or not pop. And it's so easy for us when we're really close to it to just think it's the hook or our caption or the audio we used or whatever that is. And there are just so many factors. And so I share that not to overcomplicate things, but more so that you're not making yourself crazy when something pops or doesn't pop and you're like, why did this not work? I have a reel yesterday. It's a perfectly good piece of content. I can tell you all the reasons it didn't get as much reach, but I think we're under 1,000 reach. You know what I mean? I share that again just for that context. one of the reasons I know is because it's a really specific business topic. And I know the really specific business topic is great for a few people in my audience that it's designed for, but that was never going to be a great reach post because a really specific business topic is just not viral content. Viral content is universal but specific. It is relatable to the universal groups of people. It is relevant. It is timely. It is often controversial, or again, it's so relatable. And that's just not going to happen with a very specific business topic. Usually I share those for my stories, not for my reels. Right? It's shareable. It's easy to engage with. It's simple. So I think, again, just to help you see the factors there, I do want to break down, let me actually pull up the hook a little bit. I do think it would be helpful just to share, though, a couple factors of either way. Like, I think even though this was relevant, timely, all of those things, I think the post still had to be crafted in a certain way for it to get this virality. And I think that might be really helpful for you, just to see what are some of the things that are helping, aside from me using these general words. So I think one of the things I think is helpful here when you look at the hook, first of all, this is a trending hook. This, and knowing the whole world sees how unhinged he is, even if 1/3 of our country pretends not to. That hook setup is a hook that a lot of people are using. So it's just timely, again, and just trending. But I think a couple pieces here that I would speak to for you to help you when you're creating your content, your hooks. It's really simple. I think I always want to include more in my content. I want to give you everything. I think hooks have been such a good mirror for me to see where I don't even want to call it over delivering. I don't even think it's proving. I think it's more just I want to share so much and I have a hard time being concise. And being concise and simple and clear and to the point is just copywriting 101. It is for every writer ever, that is the skill set you're always honing. Is it Stephen King who talks about killing your darlings? It is just being willing to leave more on the editing floor is just one of the skills for all of us creating content, and it is a practice. And I will say it is one of the hardest things for me because I'm always ooh, I could add in this and I could add in this and so I will say with this hook, it started out a lot longer, and I spent some time working it to make it more concise and to make it more simple because I know simple performs better. Also feels so weird to say it's not 3 seconds, right? I think the whole thing is have a 1 second or 3 second looping thing. I think this is an 8 to 10 second. It fits the audio as opposed to just trying to make it super, super quick. I also worked the hook quite a bit because I wanted to be as specific in my language as possible and as clear and simple as possible, and to essentially tell a full story in my hook so that someone would get the whole point even if they didn't read the caption. And I think that's something I talk with my clients about quite a bit when we're looking at what makes your reels pop or a carousel pop, what makes something pop. I think, and I don't know, I think maybe I wasn't really doing reels a couple of years ago, but I think the trend was more than to have the arrow and tell you that there's more in the caption. And of course there's always more in the caption, and sometimes that makes sense, especially if you're promoting something. But in general, if we're looking for virality, what I find if we know the metrics that help drive virality, one of them is shares. Just by sharing something alone, you're getting more eyeballs for whoever that shares them to. What's the stat? It's something it's staggering. I just heard it. I'm gonna butcher it, but it's a staggering stat that shares, in terms of what they do for reach, it's exponential, because that tells the algorithm to put it in front of more people, but it also everybody who shares it, if they're sharing it with their audience, let's say they have 100 people to 1,000 people seeing that, right? All of those people, you're getting those eyeballs plus the boost from the algorithm. And so shareable content and likes, I think, are and probably comments are the bigger ones for. And especially comments that are going back and forth in the comments, which happened a lot because this was controversial. But for something to be shareable, it needs to be something that we can just understand the whole thing from the video itself. I share reels back and forth with my bestie all of the time. You'll have to tell me if you do this as well. It's our love language. And if I think about what we're sharing to each other, it's stuff, I don't know, I read the caption 1 out of 10 times if it's something that really speaks to me. Most of the time when we're sharing because what is in that video And what is on that video screen, or if it's a carousel, right, what's on that carousel screen is what really lands and connects with us. That's what makes us think, oh my gosh, I need to share it to someone or share it with someone. And so again, your goals might be different. We're talking here just about reach and virality, not about sales, not about conversions, not about nurture, right? There's different types of content. So we want to keep being mindful. But if that's your goal, thinking about how do I tell the whole story in my hook, in my caption, in my video, without someone needing to see anything else can go a really long way, because that makes it easier to share. I think the other thing with shares that I think is helpful to remember, if I share something, chances are I'm sharing it more than once. Like if something is like super relevant or relatable or firing me up, or maybe think about this, when I see something good, I'm like, who can I send this to? And there's like 3 people I usually send it to, which is why that sharing factor is so helpful for reach and for virality. But that simplicity then, and having the whole story in the hook and on the screen. And the reason I say simplicity with the whole story is what I find is easy to do, and I will raise my hand, is because we know that, we're like, well, then how do I write basically a whole caption in the screen? And sometimes those work. I think there was the trend, I didn't do this one, but the trend of like, I met my younger self for coffee or for drinks or whatever that was. I think people were doing that whole one in the reel, and that worked, but for multiple reasons we don't have to break down here. I think we were willing to read all of that. But even there, the ones of that example that popped so well were the ones that were still universal, relatable, really specific, and as concise as possible. When it went on and on and on and on and on, right, you just lose people. So it doesn't mean you necessarily have to be short in just 2 lines, but I always think when I look at my hook, what can I edit out? And then sometimes what do I need to edit in so that this stands alone and can kind of tell the whole story here. I think the other thing here is with the visual. I think there's a visual hook. So it's a video that is panning the New York City skyline. I don't know if this would have done as well with me in it. I think sometimes it's interesting. I think again, we're talking just for virality. I think for conversions, for nurture, I want my face in something. Sometimes for virality, right? People don't know who the F I am. But having a panning, moving visual is a visual hook that grabs our attention. New York City's beautiful skyline, right? That grabs our attention. We already know what that is. That's really, like, you don't need to know, like, and trust me. So when I say this, right, like, that is this, and then knowing the whole country, the world sees how unhinged she is, even if 1/3 of our country pretends not to. That is literally part of the hook. And so if I don't have a good visual for this part, it doesn't make sense. So hopefully that lands there. I was trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to share just in terms of the breaking down the content piece itself. I do think, and I will say with the saves, what the saves tell me is that a lot of people read the caption. I think in general when people are saving, well, sure, some people might be saving because they want the audio or the hook or something like that. I think that happens as well. But I think in this case, people were probably saving because of the caption itself. I think this doesn't mean the caption is not important. I think it's just helpful to remember no one's getting to the caption if we don't nail the first part. And a good portion of our audience is never going to read the caption. And especially for things like saves and things for nurture and conversions, people do read the caption. And what I did in the caption is I shared a very personal story. I brought in quite a lot of specifics. It is nothing that ChatGPT could write for me, though I had ChatGPT help me edit it and help me make it more concise. It's not something that ChatGPT could have just spit out. And I think that's also why that caption did really well, right? It was from my heart. It was something I really believe. It's something I'm really convicted in. It's something I really feel strongly about. It's very specific. It has a personal story. It has specific details. It has a clear point of view. It has one clear message. And so I think when we're thinking of our captions, I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but I think these are just all things to think about. If our heart's not in it, if we don't have a clear point of view, if we're just saying the thing we think people want us to say, if we're just saying the thing that we think people need to hear, if we're just trying to think about what can I say to try to get someone to like this, right? We're missing the point there of what actually creates the connection and drives people to want to save, share, like, as opposed to what do I actually want to say? What am I actually a stand for? What what is actually on my heart, what is actually real and true for me, what is my actual personal story, what is my actual perspective on this. That is what makes a really big difference in terms of what I'm just finding with content. And I say this because as business owners, I think we have been trained, especially for those of you who have been in business for a hot second, you've been trained to think about, what do people want to hear from you? What do you need to say? What's the messaging that lands? How do you sell this, right? Like, you've been trained in many ways to think about everything but what is your truth. I think I'm just saying this so that people don't feel wrong or if this feels challenging. I really think up until recently, so much of the teaching around content and copy, and there's still an importance to this. We still need to know what our audience wants to hear from us. We still need to know our audience really well, what they're thinking, what they're saying, how they might say things. But so much of the teaching about content has been so focused on sort of like, how do you mold yourself to what someone else needs to hear, as opposed to how do you show up as transparently, honestly, truthfully as possible. And I think that's making a really, really big difference. And I think that's part of what happened here. I mean, I genuinely had no idea that this would happen with this reel. I just felt this so deeply. I think I posted this on like a Saturday night or something, where I was like sitting on my sofa. I'm like, I never post content at this time. I'm just feeling all of this so much. I like just need a place to share this with my people. Like, that's where that was coming from. And I do think there's a factor in that, including the haters that I got. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful. I want to make sure I also just speak to a couple of the other factors here. So we talked about kind of what makes that pop. We talked about some of the content pieces. I just want to spend a couple of minutes here before I hop off, just in terms of kind of the truth about going viral, the good, the bad, the neutral effects, and just some of my biggest takeaways and kind of what really matters. So I'm just thinking how I want to frame this. I think the first piece is kind of what I was saying earlier. It's sort of like the truth with having a bigger business or making more money. Look, you don't, I'm pausing because I'm just thinking how I want to frame this. I don't want to create a story that the only way to go viral is to get haters, and the only way to make a lot of money and have a lot of success is to be disliked. And generally speaking, if you're gonna have something go viral, it's because it either has to be like so relatable that it's like fuzzy kittens and something just like so cute and sweet that people want to see, or it is so relatable and controversial, right? Like, it's saying something that is just triggering people positively or negatively enough in a way that they want to comment. And usually then what happens is, because it is reaching more and more people, I'm sure a lot of those people are bots, but you're getting the bots and you're getting the sort of like fringes of the internet, right? The more viral you get, the more outside of your immediate audience and your immediate ideal clients and your immediate people, right? Like, your content first gets shown to your audience, and then if it performs well with them, it widens out and out and out. And so the more it widens out, the more you are just, again, unless you're just sharing kittens, and I don't know, there's probably people who hate fucking kittens too because people are unhinged, but unless you're sharing something like that, kind of like soft, fuzzy, neutral, you can literally post something that seems super positive and like nobody could throw shade on it and hate. And you're just generally, as you're reaching more and more segments of the population, you're just going to get some of the unhinged people. And that is part of what drives it further. And so it's not, personally, I'm not bothered at all, because I think I shared this last week, but I mean, if anything, this just showed me when you're convicted around something and you know what's true and you know what you stand for, it is interesting to me how unbothered I am by the comments on this. And it's interesting how much, if you had told me 2 years ago that I would be getting the kind of comments I did, I probably would have told you, like, I never want that. So I think it's just interesting to see in reality, like, yeah, how much it doesn't bother me. But I think just knowing that, and it's so funny. My manifesting, my energy people will feel this. So I have these notebooks here, and these are my notes from my coaching sessions with my coach and from therapy. And I have like a whole bunch over in my shelf over there. But these are like more recent ones. And so yesterday I like pulled out this, and I'm just gonna really open this and see if like there's a message for me. And I open it up, and the top thing it said, and I think this is a note I made to myself after processing a group mastermind call I had been on. Well, first, I made a note for the book Unbound, which, if you don't know that book, it is all about essentially like breaking up with good girl conditioning and being like basically not being a good girl. It's from an ex dominatrix. I highly recommend it. I think it is actually a great, it's about reclaiming your power. I think it is an excellent business book, even though it's not about business. And I think so much of what we're talking about here, the reason this went viral, right, it was the antithesis of, I feel like I've done so much work around like lovingly breaking up with my former good girl. But the top note here was you have to be willing to displease people to grow. And I think that's just, it was so funny. I was like, oh, I need to tell everybody this tomorrow. And maybe I'll create a reel around that. That's the piece there. You have to be willing to displease people to grow. And I think that's the part with virality and growth in business we just don't want to talk about. We want to know what's the right hook to share, what's the right trending audio, what's the right content, how can I get everybody to like me, because this is going to blow up my business. And that is the secret right there. You have to be willing to displease people. You have to be willing to disappoint people. You have to be willing to be disliked by people to grow. Full stop. The other thing I think is just important to say is virality is helpful, but I would not say like I'm having one of my biggest months. We won't know till the end of the month if it's my biggest cash month ever, but it's definitely one of my biggest cash months ever in 9 years of business. And yes, it happened at the same time as this reel. I don't know how much this really contributed to that. And I think that's just important to say. Now, I have a very different business model than most people. I'm scaling an all one-on-one business model. I have only a few spots that open up. Most of the sales and cash that came in this month are for because revenue share, right? It's because it passed. It's revenue share, and it's a couple new clients I booked, and then it's clients who are booking out for future spots that we have opening up. So I just have such a different business model. If I was running, big group programs or courses or masterminds, I think the virality and my audience size, I would just have a different strategy overall and would matter more. So I don't, and I'm saying this because I think we want to be mindful, because I think we hear all different stories of like, it doesn't matter, it does matter. What I think is helpful to say is with the followers, the people who followed me from this reel, I actually think would have been much more if this had been a more business specific topic, and if it hadn't been so polarizing, I guess. But it definitely grew my audience by almost 200 people. I'm sure it will continue to over the next however long. And that's free growth, that's free eyeballs. And I haven't looked at everybody who's followed me. I would wager a guess that a very small fraction of those people are business owners and people who would ever consider hiring me. And so I think this is something helpful here as well to remember. Like if this had been a viral, I don't know that I'll ever actually have a viral reel with business content. I just don't think that's content that necessarily goes viral unless it's just something so pointed or kind of so universal a topic. Viral to this degree. Maybe I could be wrong, but not to put that out there. But just in terms of the quality of followers, they're all quality people. But my hunch is that a good portion of those aren't people that are going to directly impact my business. That being said, and this is where I think things get wonky, because then people are like, oh, I don't want to go viral, or then you have the viral hangover. I've heard people say where it's like the algorithm has to figure stuff out after the next post, or you're now sending it to the wrong people. I think we also forget that Instagram has changed so much, and that in many ways our audiences matter. I want to grow, I want to build a relationship with you, but our audience size and if it's right or wrong people matters less than it used to, because your diehards, honestly, they're watching your stories. That's where I'm doing my nurture and sales, not in my feed. And what makes something go viral, each post kind of stands on its own. You can have an audience of 3 people and you can go viral tomorrow if your content is kind of doing all the things we talked about. It's such a different playing field than it was before. You can have an audience of 5 million and your next reel can bomb because your content isn't necessarily just getting shown to all of your followers. And so in that way, I'm not worried that I got some followers that maybe aren't business owners. And I also know that of those people, a segment of those new followers will be business owners where my content is relevant. I saw a couple definitely are, but I also know everybody who engages my content. I know the power of referrals and shareability. So much of my business is directly from content and clients come that way, but I also get clients from referrals or from friends of friends or from, I have someone who I really respect in our space who used to listen to my old podcast, who does something similar but has a different segment of the audience they serve, who's referred clients to me. So that's someone who will probably never ever hire me, but because of my content and because it's relevant for them, they've referred literal paying clients to me, and I'm also just so grateful for that. What a beautiful beautiful thing, and very humbled by that. But so I also don't worry too much about oh my gosh, is this person following me? Most people who follow me, I have, what do we have, 22 clients this month. I have very few spots. in this Facebook group, most of you are never going to hire me. That's just not something I super worry about, but I do think that's just helpful to name in terms of, what is this doing for my business? That being said, I will say, sharing my values, speaking up, having this be visible, I do think it's absolutely impacted some of the recent people who have hired me. And I've had quite a few people either thank me on calls and tell me that's why they're continuing to work with me, because they know and they feel like they can bring what's coming up for them around these topics to our sessions. Or people have told me that they wouldn't have hired me otherwise, or that's one of the deciding factors. And I reference that because, again, I can't tell you what's right for you in your business, whether you should speak about politics or your views outside of politics and your values. However, for most of us who have personal businesses, personal brands, where we're doing any kind of where we're not always in the lip gloss, where we're not selling fucking lip gloss, but even lip gloss, look at what's happening to Target, y'all. We're all wanting to boycott, which that's a whole different nuanced conversation, because we don't want to boycott some of like the minority owned businesses that sell products at Target. So it gets a little heady there. Anyway, I'm going down a rabbit hole. But if we're selling services where people need to feel like they're in a safer space working with us, or that like they need to understand our values, I think so many people say you shouldn't share these things in content. I do think a lot of people are looking to see what do we stand for. And so I think in that way, I don't think this needed to go viral, but I do think in that way it's been supportive of my business. I didn't share this to like get clients or anything like that. I had no idea what would happen when I shared this. If anything, thought it wasn't relevant to business. And I just, again, Saturday night, pretty much crying on my sofa, feeling like I needed to pour my heart out somewhere, and wanted to be vocal, and figured if I was feeling this, other people were as well. And two things can be true at the same time, right? I think in that way, it's been supportive. In terms of the virality, and I think that's the other thing. What I think is helpful to see, like good, bad, neutral. I think other than that, it's been quite neutral. It's like the comments, the negative comments and the positive comment. It's not like they've really made or broken my business in either way. I've had people say some real shit things, and I'm like, I think in the past I would have thought, oh my gosh, that's going to ruin my reputation. And I just know they're so false and so not true. And I'm just so convicted in what I'm saying. But also, I think I'm just in a place where I know so what is true in my business and for me. And I'm just sharing this because what I have found to be true, and I probably shared this on our last live stream and I'm repeating myself, but things tend to only trigger us and bother us if there's a part of us that worries that they're true, or worries that other people will think they're true and they can damage us. And so that's just been really helpful for me to see. I'm like, oh, like I'm sure there are things people could say that would bother me because I think they're true. Maybe about my appearance or something like that. But in terms of this, like I am just anchored in enough. I'm like, do I engage with this, or do I just let it go? More from a place of like, I want to tell someone what's up, but not from a place of like, oh, I'm bothered. And so I think that's just been really helpful to see, because I think I would have thought that would have bothered me, or would have been overwhelming, or that the comments would have been overwhelming. It is amazing how much you can just tune out and ignore. I'm basically letting the dumpster fire burn, so to say. So that's like more the neutral. Have there been any bad effects? I would say the only, like, in air quotes, bad thing I would say is I do have to be mindful, because my platform is for you as business owners, that because I'm fired up around this, and I feel strongly about this, that I don't let this become a fully personal account. And that I'm also mindful not to alienate the people who I respect deeply, who have differing opinions than me. I mean, there's certain opinions I think that we just would be out of alignment, but I think there's a lot of nuanced gray zone there. So I think in that way, that's just a line I want to be mindful of, and just mindful of like I don't turn my content or my account suddenly into a fully a conversation that isn't why my account exists in the first place. I need to make sure I'm still focusing on my business. That being said, I think this is really intertwined right now. This is the conversation I'm having with a lot of my clients. So I don't think it's so necessarily harmful. To something I'm being mindful of. And then again, I would say like the neutral thing here is, it's not like, and now I've cracked the code to going viral every time. I understand what made this viral. I understand I've helped other clients go viral. I help my clients with their content and their hooks all the time. I understand what gets reach. And I'm sure I'll have another big post, but it's not like every single reel I nail it perfectly, or that they're all the same, or that I need them to have a very successful, thriving business. And I think maybe that's the last takeaway from this. So I think there are ways this has impacted positively, negatively, neutrally in my business. But at the end of the day, I'm having one of my biggest or my biggest ever cash month in business. And I would say maybe 2% of that is because of a viral reel. The majority of it has nothing to do with that. And I say that because it's really easy for us to get latched onto vanity metrics, or when we're feeling stressed in business or we want results, to get really latched onto certain, like the performance of a specific reel or post, or even a specific conversion event, like it's real, or single email. It's really easy for us to get wrapped up into like one small thing, as opposed to seeing, is this still recording? Okay, didn't lose me. As opposed to seeing that for most of us, hi Alyssa, nice to see you here. Let me know if you have questions about this. Also, if you all have questions and have been sharing them, it's not showing them to me, but maybe you're just allowing me to rant, which is also possible. Maybe you don't have questions, but if you do, I'll see them when I get off, if it's not showing me here. Well, my closing thought here, I'll put a button on this and then wrap this up. I think what we often forget is, for all of us in business, there are so many factors that come into play from where our results are. Nobody's business is made or broken off of one thing that we do. One thing can pop, and that can absolutely positively impact things. But even when one thing pops, I have a good girlfriend in business, and she had a very viral reel. I think it was like 4 or 5 million. She got 20,000, whatever the views are. I'm sure that positively impacted her business, but she's also even if that positively impacted her business, and even if this one had, my viral reel had positively impacted my business more, the reason I'm saying it's not just that reel is, for that to positively impact my business, there has to be a whole ecosystem, a whole customer journey, a whole strategy on the back end of social media for that to positively or negatively impact my business. I've had another client who was sort of brand new to business that I helped with her content, and we blew up one of her reels pretty early on to 1 million views or more. It was really fun, and it was cool for her to see, because before that she'd been getting like literally 50 to like 150 views. So it was really cool for her to see, like, that is a massive increase. But she had just started her business. She didn't have a lot of her infrastructure, and that was one of the things we were talking about. It's like, that's great, we want it, like it's helpful, but for this to actually turn into sales, money, even a loyal audience, like, we need to have other things in place. And so I just think that's so important, because otherwise we get so focused on kind of the wrong things, or we miss the forest for the trees. You can never have a viral reel. I've never had a viral reel up until this, and I've made over 1.6 million in my business. You know what I mean? And I'm having a really great month, very, very smallly in part to this. You can have a very, very successful business and never ever go viral, because you have an ecosystem, a customer journey, a strategy that works for you, because you're building relationships, because you're showing up consistently, because you know how to build that know, like, and trust, because you know how to invite people into your world. Or you can have a couple of viral reels and literally not make a single dollar in your business. And then there's a whole and I say that, and then what happens is we hear this and we're like, well, then viral reels are wrong and bad because people go viral and don't make sales. And there's just so much gray and nuance. A viral reel can still then help amplify or blow up a whole ecosystem that's working really well. Like, I'm sure this did absolutely support my business in positive ways. And even if it was 10%, it's just, I had to have the other 90% there. So I don't want us to like throw the baby out of the bathwater, where it's like, well, then we're not even going to go after that because that's stupid. It's just more nuanced than that. And so that's the piece I want to share. It isn't bad if you go viral. It isn't going to change everything if you go viral. It can absolutely amplify, just like ads can amplify, just like anything, that more visibility can amplify things, but it's going to amplify what's already working for you. And so if there isn't something working, right, it's like, I'm an ex-actress. It's like if someone lands a part that wins them an Oscar, that will amplify their career if they're actually good at, like, if they were good enough, let me phrase this a better way. If someone lands a part that could be an award-winning movie, or they're in an award-winning movie, maybe that's the thing to say, that can amplify and blow up their career if they also have all the other factors, like they're actually good at what they do. They didn't just get that by luck, right? They show up professionally, they know how to learn their lines, all of these other factors that got them the job in the first place, and they can have them leverage that visibility. So it's kind of the same thing here. So I just want to say that, because I think sometimes otherwise we get really focused on kind of the wrong things in our business. And what I would say is focus on a solid strategy first, a solid customer journey, knowing how to get in front of people, build relationships, get known for what it is you do, building that trust, bringing people through your pipeline, getting them onto your pipeline, right? Like converting them into clients and sales. That matters more than virality. But then if you go viral and you have all of that, like that's when it can be super powerful. All right, y'all. I hope that was helpful for you. Let me know if you have questions in the comments. Let me know if you want more content like this. I can also, if it's helpful, this is my most viral. I can also pull up my worst content ever. It would be helpful to hear. Worst. I love all my content, but just least performing content, that would be helpful to hear some thoughts around that. You tell me what you want to hear more of, and then I will make sure that we have some more conversations around that. And then, did I have any other announcements for you? Oh, I will drop a link for a free coaching consultation. I am full, but I say we, like my team's having calls with me. I am meeting with potential clients for upcoming spots opening up. I don't know for sure. I'm speaking to someone right now. April might be full. We might have one more spot, or at least an intensive for April. Otherwise, I believe I book a free coaching consultation with me. We're looking possibly at April, but otherwise May and June should have. I just said someone booked for May. That's why I'm pausing. At least June. I'm starting to book out. So if you are interested in working with me in an intensive or in a 6-month partnership spot, take me up on a free coaching consultation. If it's helpful to hear, I love to work with clients like what we're talking about here with the strategy and building out that whole customer journey so that you know what you need in place to get noticed, to get known, to get paid, to create that reoccurring revenue. And then I'm really big as well on the strategies, mindset side of things to help you learn how to think and show up like a CEO, to get clear on your thought leadership, to own your thought leadership. So you have that really holistic, well-oiled running machine. My clients get excellent results, anywhere from reoccurring 10K months to reoccurring 100K cash months. I've had over 30 clients make their first 10K month. I've had 16, 17 clients make their first 6 figures. Many go to multi-six, 250K, 500K, 100K in business at 100K. And 3 of my clients have scaled from early stages of business to over $1 million. And I only offer one-on-one if you're new to my world and interested. So I'm one of the very, 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 very few coaches at my level with my 9 years of business experience, my personal results as a multi-6-figure business owner who pays myself multi-6 figures, and client results, it still offers one-on-one. But because of that, I do have limited availability. So if you are looking for a business coach, if you're looking for support, I invite you to book a coaching consultation sooner rather than later. Those 6-month partnership spots are limited, but I do open up intensives based on kind of what my schedule looks like. So, there's always a chance for a last minute intensive if there's a wait on the partnership spot. All right, y'all. Thank you for being here. Love you so much. If you have questions, drop them for me. I don't think I have any here. So I will see you next week. Bye.